Ex-wife cheated, caught an STD, and now she's begging for help after I got rich and successful. Hey Reddit. Years ago, I was just an ordinary guy, working a 9 to 5 and doing my best to support my then wife, Emily. We got married young, fresh out of college, and for a while, life felt like it was falling into place. I wasn't making a fortune, but I was providing. Emily had dreams of her own, but she was in and out of jobs, never really settling into anything long-term. I didn't mind at first. I believed in being patient, in letting her find her passion. After all, that's what marriage was, right? Supporting each other. But as the years went on, something changed. I noticed Emily becoming more distant. She was always on her phone, texting with that little smirk she used to give me when we first started dating. Only now, I wasn't the one making her smile. Late nights out with friends, weekends where she'd suddenly have plans, and the way she'd avoid intimacy with me, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. Then came the day that shattered everything. I had stayed late at work, pushing for a promotion that I hoped would finally give us the financial stability we'd always dreamed of. I came home exhausted, expecting to find Emily asleep. Instead, I found her in our bed with another man. Not just any man, my so-called best friend, Jake. The rage, the heartbreak, the sheer betrayal, it was all too much. I didn't say a word. I simply walked out, grabbed my keys, and left. Emily tried to call me, but I ignored her. I drove around for hours, my mind racing. When I finally calmed down, I went back home, packed a bag, and told her I wanted a divorce. She didn't even fight it. She just looked guilty, like she knew she had messed up but didn't have the energy to argue. The divorce was quick. We didn't have kids, and we hadn't bought a house yet, so it was just a matter of signing papers. I cut all ties with her and Jake. They moved in together not long after, and I forced myself to move on. But deep down, I was broken. That pain, however, turned into motivation. I threw myself into my work like never before. I stopped wasting time, stopped feeling sorry for myself, and started making moves. I took risks, made smart investments, and within a few years, my life completely transformed. I went from being a guy who struggled to pay rent to someone who owned multiple properties and ran a successful business. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Meanwhile, Emily's life took a very different turn. The honeymoon phase with Jake didn't last. I heard through mutual friends that he had been cheating on her, just like she had cheated on me. Karma, right? But that wasn't even the worst of it. One day, I got a message from one of her old friends. Apparently, Emily had caught an STD from Jake, one that was permanent, and to make matters worse, he left her as soon as he found out. I won't lie, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. I wasn't happy she was suffering, but I also wasn't about to pretend I had any sympathy for her. She made her choices. She destroyed our marriage. Now she had to live with the consequences. For a long time, I didn't hear from her. I figured she was off dealing with her mess while I kept building my empire. But then, out of nowhere, she reached out. At first, it was just a casual message. Hey, how have you been? It's been a while. I ignored it. I had nothing to say to her. But she didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, she kept sending messages, each one more desperate than the last. I really need to talk to you. Please. I know I messed up, but I need help. I finally caved and replied with a simple question. Why are you messaging me? She poured her heart out in response. She was struggling. She had no job, no savings, and no support system. The STD had made dating nearly impossible, and she felt alone. She saw how successful I had become and, in her words, regretted everything. Then came the kicker. She asked if we could meet up. Said she wanted to talk in person. I laughed. After all these years, after everything she did, she actually thought I would entertain the idea of seeing her again? I told her no. I told her she made her choices, and now she had to live with them. She begged, saying she had nowhere else to turn, that she was at rock bottom. I thought that was the end of it. But then, things took an unexpected turn. One day, I came home to find a letter taped to my front door. It was from her. In it, she poured out all her regrets, all her pain, all the ways she had destroyed her own life. She apologized over and over, saying she knew she didn't deserve my forgiveness but hoped I could at least hear her out. And then, at the very bottom of the letter, was the thing that truly caught me off guard. She wrote that she wasn't just reaching out for herself. She had a secret, one that she had been hiding for years. A secret that changed everything. And just like that, I found myself unable to ignore her anymore. Want to know what the secret was? You won't believe what she revealed in the next update. Stay tuned. Update. I wasn't planning on responding to Emily after that letter. I had spent years building my life from the ground up, years pushing past the pain she caused, and I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her mess. But that last line in her letter stuck with me. She had a secret. A big one. For days, I debated what to do. My logical side told me to toss the letter in the trash and never think about her again. But another part of me, the part that had once loved her, the part that had spent years thinking she was my forever, couldn't let it go. I needed to know what she was hiding. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. Not at my home, not anywhere private, but at a busy coffee shop in broad daylight. I wasn't giving her an opportunity to guilt-trip me in private. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. The confident, carefree woman I had once known was gone. In her place was someone who looked tired, worn down by life. Her once perfect smile was hesitant, her hands fidgeting on the table. For a moment, I felt a sliver of pity. Then I remembered everything she had done, and that pity disappeared. I sat down, and before she could start with small talk, I cut to the chase. "What's the secret?" She looked down at her coffee cup, took a deep breath, and said the words that made my entire world freeze. "You have a daughter." At first, I thought I misheard her. But then she looked up at me, her eyes full of guilt and something else, fear. She went on to explain that after we divorced, she found out she was pregnant. She was scared, ashamed, and convinced I would never forgive her. So she decided to keep it a secret. At the time, she had planned to raise the baby with Jake, but when he found out about the pregnancy, he wanted nothing to do with it. He left, and she was left alone to figure things out. For years, she raised our daughter by herself, struggling financially, hopping from one low-paying job to another, and trying to make ends meet. Then, when she got diagnosed with an STD, something she swore she never passed to the baby, her life spiraled even further. Medical bills piled up, and her ability to work declined. That's when she finally decided to reach out to me. I didn't know what to say. I had a daughter. A child I had never met, never even knew existed. And Emily had kept her from me. Rage, shock, disbelief, it all hit me at once. I demanded proof. I wasn't about to take her word for it. She handed me a small envelope, her hands shaking. Inside were photos of a little girl. And the moment I saw her, I knew. She had my eyes. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I had spent years thinking I was free from Emily's betrayal, years thinking that I had left my past behind. But now, I had a daughter, a child who had spent her entire life not knowing I existed. I needed time. I told Emily I would get a DNA test, but I wasn't making any promises. I wasn't going to be manipulated into anything without solid proof. She nodded, as if she had expected that response, and we went our separate ways. I walked out of that coffee shop a different man than when I walked in. Because whether I liked it or not, my life had just changed forever. Another update. It took 2 weeks to get the DNA results back. 2 of the longest weeks of my life. In that time, I couldn't focus on work, couldn't think straight. All I could do was replay every moment of my marriage with Emily, every time she had looked me in the eye and lied. If the test came back positive, I wasn't just dealing with the fact that I had a daughter, I was dealing with the fact that I had missed out on years of her life. When the results finally arrived, I barely had the courage to open them. But I did. And there it was. 99.99% probability of paternity. I was a father. The emotions that hit me were impossible to describe. Joy, regret, anger, fear, it all mixed into something overwhelming. I had a daughter, and I had missed her first words, her first steps, her birthdays. While I had been building my empire, she had been growing up without me. I texted Emily and told her we needed to meet again. This time, I wasn't interested in her sob story. I wanted to see my daughter. She was hesitant at first, clearly afraid of what I would say. But after some back and forth, she finally agreed. The first time I saw my daughter in person, it felt like my entire world shifted. She was shy, hiding behind Emily, but the moment she looked at me, I saw the resemblance. She had my nose, my hair, my damn expressions. My heart broke at the thought of all the years I had missed, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't missing another second. I told Emily that I wanted to be in my daughter's life, no negotiations. Emily looked relieved, like she had been hoping I'd say that, but was too afraid to expect it. But just as we were about to figure out how to move forward, something happened that changed everything once again. Emily collapsed. 1 second, she was fine, and the next, she was on the floor, unconscious. I called 911, panicking, while my daughter screamed in fear. It was in that moment, as I held my child and waited for the ambulance, that I realized something. No matter how much I hated Emily for what she had done, she was still the only parent my daughter had ever known. And now, she might not be around much longer. Final update. Emily was rushed to the hospital. I spent the entire night there, pacing back and forth, not knowing what to expect. When the doctor finally came out, his face was grim. Emily's condition was worse than she had let on. The STD had caused complications, leading to serious long-term health issues. Her immune system was weakened, and her body was struggling to keep up. She wasn't dying yet, but if she didn't get the right treatment, fast, her condition would deteriorate. For years, I had thought I was done with her. I had thought I would never have to deal with her again. But now, I was faced with a choice I never expected to make. She needed help. And my daughter needed a mother. I had every reason to walk away, to let Emily deal with the consequences of her choices. But looking at my daughter, seeing the fear in her eyes, I knew I couldn't. I told the doctors to do whatever it took to help Emily. I covered every medical bill, arranged for the best specialists, and ensured she got the treatment she needed. Not for her, but for my daughter. In the end, life has a way of throwing curveballs. I thought I had closed the door on my past, but sometimes, the past comes knocking in ways you never expect. Now, I have a daughter to raise, a life to adjust to, and an ex-wife who, despite everything, is still part of the picture. But one thing is certain. I'm never letting anyone take my daughter from me again.